Another important type of conversion is when we want to convert string into integer, and you might say, okay, we do the same process for converting the string into integer, but let's see what happens actually when we want to do this kind of conversion. For instance, you can define or declare a number s equals to, for example, 5, and we put it in quotation marks for declaring it as a string. So we put an integer inside, we define it as a string or inside the quotation marks, and then we want to convert it into, so let's print it first. Print the type and the number type s, and the number itself s, and then next thing we want to do is to convert it into integer, ints, we call it int, and that means that this is the integer of s. And so by saving the code and writing it and running it, Python free conversion .py. Okay, let's see what happened there. So we wanted to, okay, what happened here was that we managed to convert the string into integer and nothing. So for example, if you want to convert a string like s equals, you have to first convert it into float and then convert it into integer, because if you do it just the way we've done here directly, it cannot do that. But in the recent versions of Python, you can easily do that by writing int, and inside the parentheses you put the string, and nothing wrong happens, as you can see here. So if we do the same for ints, we put the same statement, and instead of s we put ints. Let's save the code and rerun it, and here, as you can see, we have the integer and 5. So we've successfully converted the string into integer by directly placing the int converter, and there's no need to first convert it into float. But in that scenario, when int does not work here, you have to do something like this: int and int and float, int of float of s, and this is going to do the same thing, but here we first convert into float and then to integer, and this helps you go around this problem. Anyway, that's it. Here we can directly use the integer converter instead of using float converter first and then the integer converter. So there was no direct conversion from string into integer. There used to be no such kind of converter, but here we have this kind of converter. And now we are going to talk about the last kind of conversion, and that is converting into a string. So in order to convert anything to a string, you need to do the very same process as you did for float and you did for integer. So you place str function, and inside of it you can write 2, you can write, I don't know, anything else. Okay, let me place this, and let me place this one. And put here str conversion, for example. This is just the name of the variable. It doesn't matter what you name it. It could be A, B, C, D, or anything else. Here I write str conversion. And also notice that if you're going to work on a very big development, it's very important to name your variables wisely, because if you, for example, choose A, B, or C, or D, nobody's gonna understand what it actually is. But here, if you write something that everyone can easily understand, and it's not a very long variable, not hard to read, something like this, str conversion, everybody will be able to understand what you're actually going to do. So here, the variable, the name of the variable tells you that you're going to convert 2, which is an integer, into string. So this function str is will do this process of conversion into string, and even if you enter a string, like for example name, it will convert it into name with apostrophes. So here we entered the name into these quotation marks, but it will convert it into kind of strings inside of apostrophes. And notice that in Python it doesn't matter which one you use, quotation mark or apostrophes, doesn't really matter that much. But just for your own record, this is going to become like that. And for example, if you enter 2, which is an integer, it will convert it into a string like this, 2. And if, for example, you enter a float, 3.5, it will convert it into the same thing, 3.5 inside the apostrophes. Okay, anyway, these are just commands for you to understand what happens behind the scenes. So here, if I print the same thing about str conversion variable, you're going to see that the type is a string, and it will also print the string for you. But notice that on the console, you will not be able to see these apostrophes. You will only see 3.5. So you shouldn't mistake it with an integer or float or whatever it is inside the apostrophes, in order to understand that whether it's a string or it's a float or it's an integer, the only thing you need to do is to use this type function in order to understand. Okay, let's save the code and let me open up our terminal and rerun the code. Okay, here as you can see, here str2 is of the type string, and it types 2, which is a string but is not printed with apostrophes. And that's why I told you that using the type function is important. Okay, that's it. That's just as easy as it is for converting the different types of variables into each other. And this is not a very big deal, but this kind of conversion is very important, especially if you're saving data to a database, or you're querying data from a database, and then you want to do some mathematical operations or do some kind of a data science thing like machine learning, AI, that needs mathematical operations on the numbers. So you get it from the database, you query it, and you want to convert it. Here, as you can see, you will get a string which shows that it's a number, but you will face an error that it says that it cannot do mathematical operations on a string. So at that time, you need to check whether the type is a string or float or integer, and then you need to do the conversion. Okay.